Perfect. I think we're all set. Hello, everyone. My name is Shruthi. I'm a solution engineer with Freshworks. Been with the company for 6 years now. Been in Berlin for the last 4. I'm joined by my colleague Sidharth Mohan. He's been with the company for 8 years. Also been in Berlin for the last 5. Great to meet you all today. Before we get started, how many of you have heard of Freshworks before? Okay, good. And for the rest of you, we're looking to change that over the course of the next 25 minutes. So we're going to be covering a couple of different topics today, starting with how we're incorporating AI into service management, not only service management, but also service operations, and how we're doing that to take IT or your ITSM tooling from being an operative tool to being a strategic business enabler. Now, agentic AI, I don't think that's a strange term for anyone in the room. It's expected that over the next 3 years, the percentage of enterprises that will be deploying AI for IT would be around 70% compared to last year, where it was less than 5%. Now, naturally, we've been seeing automation in a couple of different areas in workflows, but I would say that the implementation of this has primarily been at the L1 level. So think about some of the standard service requests you're getting, some of the single-step automations to orchestrate something in another application or perform another task like assign a license and so on and so forth. But in the next 12 to 24 months, it's expected that agentic AI will be deployed for orchestrating not only L1, but also L2 and L3 activities as well. Now, for those of you who are on your journey with agentic AI, I don't think the information on this slide is a stranger to you as well, because there are a lot of challenges that enterprises are encountering as they try to deploy agentic AI in their workflows. Firstly, fragmented AI efforts. So you might have a couple of different bots that are sitting within a couple of different tools. It's difficult to manage all of them in one place, and then when you do manage them, when you do have your workflow set up, how do you then test them? How do you then build them? How do you deploy them? And then once you've deployed it, how do you then continue to manage and iterate these bots with time? Secondly, in terms of capabilities, what are they able to do? Is it stuck at the L1 level, or does it allow you to go to the L2 and L3 orchestration level as well? And then outside of capability, how fast is it for you to then go to the next level? How fast is it for you to then design what you want, build what you require, moving outside of the demo phase into actual production? How much time does it take to go from POC to production? And then when it comes to control and visibility, how do you control who's allowed to do what, who's allowed to see what, when it comes to the way that people interact with the bots as well? So what we're going to be showing to you today is Freddy AI Agent Studio. So we'll be showing you what our approach is to some of the issues that we just talked about right now. So how are we able to provide you with a unified studio or a unified platform for you to build, deploy, manage the various agents that you may have within your environment or that you would build within your environment? What capabilities are you able to extend? What capabilities are we allowing you to extend within your environment, going beyond the L1 workflow into the L2, L3? How quick would it be to get this set up and get it up and running? And how simple would it be to have that set up as well? And then how are you then able to define the guardrails, and how are you able to control the behavior of these agents as you get them set up for your users to use as well? Now, there are a couple of different areas that we'll be covering. First of all, when we talk about the way that you launch your AI agents, we have a couple of workflows that are available for you out of the box on day one. So that means for some of the routine requests that we think about, like, how do I check my leave request? How am I able to raise an expense request? There are out-of-the-box connectors that we have with multiple applications that you might be using, like Workday or Azure AD, and so on and so forth. So because these are some areas that we already provide to you out of the box, you could essentially leverage them as a template to then take it to the next level where you need to go. Aside from that, the process of building the bot itself takes you from, I think the phrase no code is my favorite on this slide. You don't necessarily need to have extensive coding expertise for you to get the bot to do what you need to do and get it up and running. And also, in terms of the way that your users are able to communicate with the bots that you're setting up, for those of you who are working in a global environment, how do you get a bot to, how do you set up a chatbot such that, you know, whether a user is speaking in English or German or French or Danish or any language that you're supporting, how do you get it working across multiple languages? How are you able to define the way that a bot is talking to you, the behaviors that it should be exhibiting in the conversations that it's having? So don't take my word for it. I think I'd like to invite Sid to the stage to actually show you what this looks like in reality.
Thank you, Shruthi. So what we've seen so far is a pretty nice introduction to what we do with agentic AI. So let's see what it looks like actually in practice. I think Shruthi said a good bedrock for what we're going to see, and we're going to delve into some of the feature sets that could be really interesting when it comes to implementing agentic AI. The first example we're going to look at is, I think, something that many of us might do on a regular basis, something that we can all relate to, which is requesting for access to an application within our own organizations. In this scenario, what's happening is the bot is, of course, understanding in context what I want. It knows the applications that I am allowed access to, perhaps based on my role in the organization or the level that I might be on my HRMS tool. And what it's doing here is reading into the HR tool. It's checking for the application, checking if I have permission to access this application, making those decisions on behalf of perhaps an IT agent or a person that might have been doing it in the past, and processing the request fully end-to-end. This is an example where you can fully automate this kind of an experience without needing anyone to manually intervene, because this information already exists within every organization in Workday or in SAP or wherever we're able to define whether a particular individual has access to an application. So we're able to eliminate a lot of time that is otherwise wasted in manually checking for this info or building the automations and APIs that we might need to reference this information and bring it back to the ITSM platform, which in this case is Freshservice. Now, this experience right now is something that we saw on our support portal, but this is something that can be extended to any chat-based platform, say Microsoft Teams or Slack. It's something that can be embedded on your website. So the idea is that it's fully natural language, and we want to bring it to where users prefer being, as opposed to forcing users to adopt our way of working. To Shruti's point as well, this is also completely multilingual. Right now, the prompts were all in English, but the advantage of using AI in this case is I can have all of my setup and configuration in a language of choice, but I'm able to support a truly global workforce and deliver these services in their preferred language without needing to duplicate the effort to configure everything in all the languages that I support. Now, moving to the back end of what is actually going on here, you can see here that the bot builder itself is quite visual in nature. It's quite intentional. It's been our design language from the very beginning. And that is, of course, to remove, I think, a lot of technical barriers that our customers and users typically face when adopting an enterprise-ready tool like this. We want to make it easy to understand, easy to configure, and most importantly, easy to scale along with the size of the organization, so that when maybe a new team adopts the software or a new individual becomes the business owner for this particular tool, they're not lost in series of codes and series of manuals that they first need to go through and learn in order to be able to use the tool effectively. This also enables very useful audits because of the visual builder. You're really able to see how data flows from what triggers the bot flow to how the bot processes that information, where it needs to read in, and what it needs to write to. We also ensure that we provide a bunch of templates out of the box to get all of our customers up and running as quick as possible. In this case, we are seeing an HR agent with some typical examples of how the bot can help with things like leave application access, maybe viewing leave balance, understanding dependencies within the org structure, and so on. These are just templates to, I guess, help give customers food for thought on how they can realistically use these bots on a day-to-day basis and really drive value. You can build your own templates, of course. This is just something that would help most of our customers get started. Speaking of HR, we're not limited, of course, to just IT as a team or ITSM as a baseline. Our the goal of our entire product suite is to ensure that there's one platform for all departments within an organization that they can leverage together and really collaborate and communicate effectively with one another. We are customer zero for this platform. We've been using it internally since the very beginning, and I think by virtue of us using it, we're also able to enforce our learnings of that tool into how we develop it going forward. Staying with employees and HR, let's take the scenario of employee onboarding or employees transitioning through an organization. We purpose-built a module for this called Employee Journeys, which again templatizes the entire experience. So you can see here that you have different phases of the onboarding journey that are clearly defined, and different activities within these phases that can be owned by the new employee that's joining, that can be owned by an individual that's responsible for perhaps creating their accounts in Azure AD, giving them access to different applications, sending an email to the employee, welcoming them onto the company, if there's any background checks that need to be done, essentially being able to satisfy all of the prerequisite checklists that you might have within your own organizations, but in a templatized manner. Similar to what I mentioned earlier, everything here is drag and drop, so you don't need to build code anything from scratch. You don't need to really tell the tool what to do. It's as easy as clicking on the buttons and really trying to recreate the experience that we all have every single day with our smartphones in our pockets, just to make sure that enterprise applications are just as fluid and just as easy to use as what we use as consumers on a day-to-day basis. Now, this translates to something like this when you see it in action. What this means is that there's one individual that can typically own the onboarding process for every single employee, but they have full visibility across the board, end to end, to ensure that in case there are certain activities that are going over the defined SLAs, or in case they need to escalate anything to maybe their manager or approver, they are able to see what the status of each corresponding activity is. They're able to see if it's overdue, what maybe the created or due date of that activity is, and across every single stage. So you also know, in case a stage hasn't started, what the required conditions are for that stage to trigger. So a very simple example is we speak to many customers where they have their onboarding processes defined, but all of the tickets and activities that they need to perform get created at the very beginning, as soon as they hire the employee. And this means that you have about 20 tickets that are sitting in your queue that you don't really need to act on for months together, which is confusing. It messes up the reporting, it messes up SLAs and so on. So we've tried to address all of this based on, of course, customer feedback, but our own experience, and ensure that this templatized format not only helps you create these these workflows within your organization, not just for onboarding, but for any kind of employee movement, from moving from one department to another, for offboarding, or for any project really that can benefit from this kind of a Kanban board template. And the owner of that application or that process is truly able to have end-to-end visibility and ensure that actions are taken at the right time, escalations are made to the right people, and everybody, the employee, the people working on the tickets, all of the ancillary departments that are involved in the process have a great user experience. Now, one of the key things about onboarding an employee is ensuring that they receive the right assets. It starts with end-user compute, like a laptop or maybe a business phone, but this can extend from an IT team's perspective to any kind of an asset that is within a company's network. It could be network-related devices like routers or switches, or it could be applications that are hosted on servers. It could be applications or devices in racks in data centers, and we are able to support the entire gamut of the asset management spectrum. With our comprehensive discovery tools, not only are we able to identify each individual asset, but we're able to identify the relationships that assets have with one another. In many times, these relationships could also be invisible because one individual might not have a full, let's say, field of view on how these different assets communicate and speak to each other, and how they're grouped together when it comes to serving as applications for different people that might use these assets. If we go one step back we are not only able to see these relationships at a global view, but also able to see the topology at a local view. So you can understand how different application groups interact with each other. And all of this information is something that's automatically discovered. You don't need to build these relationships. If you know it, well and good, you can. But in our experience, most customers, especially at an enterprise level, have tens of thousands of assets that communicate at different speeds, at different intervals with one another, and it's impossible really to maintain that system manually. And that's where we come into the picture and say, hey, we have different ways in which we can deploy discovery methods to discover the entire asset topology, but also understand how they're connected to each other and what kind of impact, downstream impact that can have when there is an incident on one of these assets. So it helps us understand who else could be affected by that incident, what remediation methods need to be taken, and in the future, what steps need to be taken to ensure that something like this doesn't happen. So being proactive about resolving these issues before they become a business-critical problem. At this stage, I would like to call Shruthi back onto the stage to take us through some examples of how we can use this information in an incident management process.
Thank you, Sid. So if we think about the value of being able to see your CMDB in one place, and as Sid showed us, how are you able to visualize not just the resources and the devices that are existing within your landscape, but how they communicate with each other and what kind of applications they may be representing, what applications they may be supporting. The value that our customers are able to get from this are threefold. The first is reducing the cost of downtime. So consider, for example, you're a retail company, you have a payment processing service that has gone down. Every minute that that service is down is revenue that's lost. So the sooner that you're able to identify that issue and the sooner that you're able to remediate that, the less money you're going to lose. The second is in terms of inefficiency of over-provisioning. So let's take, for example, in an infrastructure or basically an environment where there may be underutilized resources, there may be ghost resources if you don't have a good visualization of what exists within your infrastructure. That's money that is then being wasted, I would say, in terms of the resources that you have, or you're not able to utilize or visualize effectively. And finally, the risk of non-compliance. I've been speaking with a lot of customers recently who are looking into NIS2 compliance or extending their TSAC certification for example, as well. So then if there are any penalties that are associated with not being audit compliant, your exposure in case of a cybersecurity breach, these are just some of the areas where our customers have benefited from being able to have their CMDB within the system as well. Overall, when we are able to support essentially, not just the IT service management component, but bring in the asset management area as well as the operations management area, what this means is it enables collaboration across all three areas. So consider, for example, a use case where you have a monitoring solution on the one hand that is monitoring key services within your infrastructure. You get to know that something is down. But then if it's not connected with your IT ticketing system, then there's a delay between first identifying that something is down and then notifying the right people on call to let them know that something needs to be handled, documenting that information within the ticketing system, and then also checking your CMDB or your, wherever you're documenting the resources that you have to then identify what is impacted, what other relationships, what other related services or assets may be impacted, and so on and so forth. So by bringing this all under one house, we're essentially unifying this process in one single pane of glass. Meaning that if we consider the layout that we see with a lot of our customers who might be having a hybrid setup. For example, you may be having on-premise resources that are sitting within a data center. So you have rooms, you have racks, you have buildings. So how do we essentially visualize the resources that are sitting within your data center? And then on the other hand, the core devices that you may be managing as well. So as Sid mentioned, the end user devices, such as the laptops, but also physical servers that you may be having, anything with an IP address. From an IT operations standpoint, your monitoring solution that provides you with the alerts and notifies you of the health of your services. But then, of course, the users who are impacted by the uptimes and downtimes of your services as well, whether it's the agents who are responding to these incidents or the users who are dependent on these services as well. So in this case, what we would do is we would connect with your monitoring solution. So anytime you receive an alert, that gets registered within the system. And then if you were to get, let's say, 2 or 3 back-to-back high-severity alerts, we're then able to trigger an incident or a major incident off the back of that. And then we already know what business service is related to that incident as well. And as that incident is registered, we have an agent who's responsible for remediating the issue. We have our user or the requester who might be writing to you to say, hey, customers are not able to process payments, for example. You also, by requester here, we also mean any user, really, who is impacted by the outage and the department they belong to as well. If your incident ticket requires a deeper root cause analysis, we can initiate problem management off the back of that as well. And then, of course, in one single area, being able to see what is a service impacted, but also what is the impacted device and what is the impacted asset off the back of that as well, because those relationships exist within one area. And then, aside from that, with the application itself, as Sid mentioned, what are the applications that exist within the group, within a service, and then what devices those may be hosted on as well. So if any one resource is at risk, you can very easily identify if any other resource may be at risk as well. And then, of course, if you need to go into the physical details of where it's hosted, where specifically it exists, then what that looks like within your physical infrastructure as well on-premise. So consider an example where you are upgrading the operating system of the laptops for your end user devices. We're able to essentially log the activity trail of any kind of change that's being deployed across the devices, not just as a manual update to say that, hey, this is a change that we are deploying, but any kind of modification that's being made to those devices will be tracked in the activity log here. So that way, at any point of time, if there's been some kind of issue with respect to, in this case, rolling out a new OS, we're then able to identify which devices had the OS upgraded, and then what are then the specifications of that as well, going into the deeper layer over here. So taking one step back, how it all connects together, for those of you who haven't heard of Freshworks before, essentially these are broadly the areas that we cover. We started with IT service management. How are we able to process incidents, service requests for the users who might be reporting them, whether it's Teams or Slack or through our portal. And then also extending that beyond to enterprise service management, how this can be extended to HR or facilities or any other department that needs to coexist with IT as well. But then outside of that, asset management and operations management as well, all of that residing on top of the CMDB as our core data layer. If you want to learn more, we have a stand inside in room number 1. We also have a lottery, of course, if you'd like to win a car or a umbrella for the weather today. But I hope the session has been useful, and if you want to learn more, of course, come by our table. Thank you.